There are moments in life when the heart feels too heavy to carry. Days when a small misunderstanding lingers like a shadow, or a quiet loss echoes longer than we expected. We lie in bed hoping for rest, yet the body sleeps, while the mind keeps traveling, replaying words, faces, regrets. We hold on, even when holding on only deepens the ache. In the gentle light of Buddhist wisdom, forgetting does not mean erasing. It means transforming the way we see our pain, learning to be with what hurts without letting it rule us. The Buddha once said, "When the mind needs restraint, know to restrain it. When the mind needs uplifting, know to uplift it." This is the art of balance, to know when to pause, when to breathe, and when to smile again. Welcome to Moonlight Temple, a peaceful place to rest your heart and breathe through the quiet spaces within. Tonight, we'll walk together through stories of compassion, lessons from parents and teachers, and the serene wisdom that helps us soften the edges of sorrow. You will discover how to sit beside your pain until it becomes peace. If this moment brings you calm, let your heart stay a little longer and gently follow Moonlight Temple for more journeys into stillness and understanding. Chapter 1. When the Mind Needs Restraint, Learning to Pause. Part 1. The Restless Mind. Understanding its nature. There is a quiet restlessness that lives inside all of us. Even when the world around us falls still, even when the room is silent and the night is calm, our mind continues to move. It runs forward and backward, touching the past, rehearsing the future, circling around things that no longer exist. It plans, imagines, worries, remembers. Like a bird that cannot find a branch to settle on, the mind keeps fluttering from one thought to another. In the language of the Buddha, this is often called the monkey mind. It is quick, curious, untamed, and endlessly energetic. It jumps from one branch of thought to the next, never resting for long. The more we try to hold it still, the more it resists. Yet this movement is not wrong or sinful. It is simply the nature of the human mind, alive, responsive, and easily stirred. When the Buddha taught his disciples about meditation, he never asked them to empty the mind. To make the mind empty is impossible. To live is to think, to breathe is to feel. Thoughts are like the wind. They will always pass through. But the practice is to notice when the wind blows too hard, to know when our thoughts become storms, and to learn how to steady the flame of awareness within them. One day, the Buddha spoke to a group of monks who were struggling to find peace during meditation. Their bodies were still, but their minds were racing. They sat with eyes closed, yet their inner world was full of noise, unfinished conversations, images of loved ones, worries about tomorrow. The Buddha said to them, "When the mind needs restraint, know to restrain it." He did not mean to suppress the mind, to push away thoughts with force or judgment. He meant to recognize the moment when the mind begins to wander and gently bring it back home. To restrain in this sense means to hold with kindness, not to imprison. It is like guiding a child who has wandered off the path. You do not scold or punish the child. You simply take their hand and walk them back. In the same way, when your mind runs to the past or the future, you can say softly, "Come back." That simple awareness, that gentle invitation, is already a form of wisdom. There is a small story told by Buddhist teachers about the nature of this wandering mind. A monk once asked his teacher, "Why is my meditation so full of thoughts? Why can't I find peace?" The teacher smiled and said, "Because your mind loves to travel. It has been wandering for many lifetimes, searching for something to hold on to. You cannot make it stop by force. You can only invite it to rest. He continued, imagine a bowl of water after someone has stirred it. If you try to push the ripples down with your hand, you only create more waves. But if you leave the bowl alone, if you simply wait in stillness, the water will settle on its own. The mind is like that. When you stop trying to fix it, it becomes calm by itself. We often misunderstand meditation as a fight against thoughts, a battle between silence and noise. But real meditation is not about stopping the mind. It is about learning to see it clearly. When we see it clearly, we stop being dragged by it. We begin to notice the space between our thoughts, the quiet intervals where peace already exists. In daily life, this restless energy shows up in simple ways. We are cooking, but our mind is already at work. We are driving, but our thoughts are miles ahead. We sit with a friend, yet half of us is somewhere else. Even at night, when the body lies down, the mind refuses to rest. It revisits conversations, replays mistakes, imagines how things might have been different. It keeps traveling through time, unwilling to stop. And so, we feel tired even after sleeping. The body rests, but the mind continues to run marathons. This is why true rest is not found only in the body. It must also be found in the mind. To rest the mind is to allow it to pause, to breathe without chasing, to see without judging, to think without clinging. When the Buddha taught the practice of meditation, he offered a very simple anchor, the breath. The breath is always here, always real, and always changing. You don't need to go anywhere to find it. You don't need special tools or rituals. You just need to notice, to feel the cool air as it enters your nose, to feel the warmth as it leaves. When the mind wanders, the breath is the gentle hand that leads it back. Many centuries after the Buddha, Zen masters continued this teaching. One of them said, "The mind is like the moon reflected in water. The water moves, and the moon seems to dance, but the moon itself never moves." What we call distraction is simply the movement of the water, the shifting of attention. Beneath it all, there is stillness. When we learn to sit quietly, we begin to see that the moon, the true nature of the mind, has always been calm. In our modern lives, the monkey mind has countless playgrounds, screens, conversations, ambitions, memories, worries, all invite the mind to jump, spin, and cling. We live surrounded by noise, and silence has become a rare visitor. Yet even in this world, the same ancient truth applies. Peace does not come from changing the world, but from learning how to pause within it. Sometimes people say, "I can't meditate, my mind is too busy." But that busyness is exactly where meditation begins. The moment you notice that your mind is busy, you are already awake. Awareness is the doorway to calm. You don't need to force silence. You only need to remember that you are aware. The storm may continue, but the sky, your awareness, is untouched. In one of the Buddha's discourses, he described mindfulness as the practice of knowing what is happening while it happens. It sounds simple, but this simple knowing changes everything. When you notice your anger as anger, your sadness as sadness, your restlessness as restlessness, the emotion begins to soften. It no longer hides in the dark corners of the mind. It becomes something you can hold with compassion. Think of it this way. When a child cries, the parent does not shout, "Stop crying." The parent kneels down, embraces the child, and says, "I see you. I'm here." That tender attention is what helps the child calm down. Your mind works in the same way. When you notice your agitation and say softly, "I see you," the storm begins to fade. This is the heart of restraint, to know when to stop feeding the mind with more stories. Most of our suffering comes not from what happens, but from the endless replaying of it. Something small occurs, but we replay it hundreds of times, each time adding more emotion. Like fanning a fire, our thoughts keep the pain alive. When we finally pause, the flame begins to die down. So, when the Buddha said, "When the mind needs restraint, know to restrain it," he was offering a gentle invitation. Stop feeding the fire. Don't add wood to every spark of anger, every worry, every fear. Let it burn out by itself. The way to do this is through awareness, noticing what arises, breathing with it, and not identifying with it. There is a well-known Zen saying, "Let thoughts come and go, but don't serve them tea." You can welcome them at the door, acknowledge their presence, but you don't have to invite them to stay. Thoughts are visitors. Awareness is the home. When you first begin this practice, the mind will resist. It will whisper, "Just one more thought, just one more plan." It will remind you of all the things you need to do, all the people you need to worry about. But if you stay with the breath, in, out, you will begin to notice small moments of stillness. Those moments are precious. They are glimpses of the natural peace that has always been there, beneath the noise. In the time of the Buddha, monks were often taught to meditate in forests or quiet places. They were surrounded by the sounds of birds, wind, and flowing water. But you do not need a forest to find stillness. Even in a crowded city, even in a busy home, the breath is your forest. The pause between each inhale and exhale is your quiet stream. Learning to pause is not about withdrawing from life. It is about meeting life with clarity. When the mind is still, even for a few seconds, you can see more deeply. You begin to understand what is truly needed in this moment, and often it is much less than you thought. Many of us have been taught to solve everything by thinking harder, but thinking is only one tool. Sometimes, what is needed is not more thought, but more space around thought. When we pause, insight arises naturally. It is like a pond that clears. Once the ripples fade, only then can we see to the bottom. There was once a teacher who said, "Do not chase stillness. Be still, and stillness will find you." That is the essence of restraint. We do not chase peace as something outside ourselves. We create the conditions for peace to appear through patience, attention, and kindness. If you are listening now and your mind feels busy, that is okay. You don't have to fix it. Just listen to your own breathing for a moment. Inhale gently, exhale softly. Feel the rise and fall of your chest. Notice the body's quiet rhythm. This simple awareness is already enough. The path begins here, not with perfection, but with presence. When we understand the nature of the restless mind, we begin to see that nothing is wrong with us. The mind is simply doing what it has always done, thinking, moving, searching. The problem arises only when we forget that we have a choice to follow every thought or to pause and let it pass. Restraint is not control, it is remembering that we can choose peace. In the next part of our journey, we will explore how to return again and again, how to gently guide the mind back each time it wanders, and how that simple act of returning can transform restlessness into quiet strength. Until then, let this thought stay with you. Peace is not something we find when the mind stops moving. Peace is what remains when we stop chasing every movement. You are listening to a gentle teaching from the Moonlight Temple series, wisdom drawn from ancient Buddhist roots, brought to life with care and presence. To fully receive the heart of these teachings, I invite you now to pause, soften the edges of your day, let your body rest, take in a slow, quiet breath, and exhale into stillness. Allow your awareness to return, not to the past, not to the future, but to this very moment. Nothing else is required, just your presence. If this offering has brought you a moment of peace, we gently invite you to support this journey by subscribing to the Moonlight Temple, sharing these teachings, or simply returning again when your heart needs rest. Every small act of presence helps this temple of silence grow. Part 2. The practice of returning. Stories of awareness. There was once a monk who sat in meditation at the edge of a forest. The evening air was still, yet faintly, in the distance, came the sound of a flute. Its melody was soft, almost tender, floating through the trees like a memory he could not name. The monk's eyes remained closed, but his mind began to follow the sound. It traveled beyond the forest, into the village, imagining the player, the house, the faces of the people nearby. Soon he was no longer sitting in silence. He was sitting in a dream of sound. Then, as if hearing the echo of his teacher's voice, he remembered, "When the mind drifts, come back to the breath." Slowly, he inhaled, feeling the air fill his chest, and exhaled, feeling it leave again. The music was still there, but now it was simply a sound among many others. The wind, the insects, the distant hum of the night. In that moment, the monk realized something profound. The practice is not about keeping the mind from wandering. It is about remembering to return. The art of returning is the heartbeat of mindfulness. It is gentle, repetitive, endlessly forgiving. Every time we notice that the mind has left the present moment, we have already woken up. Awareness itself is the awakening. Many people believe they fail at meditation because their thoughts wander too much. But the wandering is not failure, it is the very path. The act of noticing that we've wandered and coming back is like a bell calling us home. Each time we return, the distance between distraction and awareness becomes smaller. At first, it might take many minutes before you realize you've been lost in thought. Over time, you begin to notice within seconds. Eventually, awareness becomes like a friend who walks beside you everywhere, patient, kind, and always ready to remind you, you're here now. Just breathe. In the Zen tradition, this returning is often compared to training a small, lively puppy. When you first bring the puppy home, it runs everywhere, chewing on shoes, chasing shadows, knocking over bowls. You don't get angry, you simply guide it again and again, with patience. Each time it wanders, you call it back gently, until one day, it begins to rest by your side. The mind is not so different. It has energy, curiosity, habits of movement. When we try to control it through force, it resists. But when we guide it with gentleness, it begins to trust us. The Buddha's teachings are filled with stories that reveal this truth. One day, a student came to the Buddha, frustrated. "My mind won't stay still," he said. "It's like a wild horse. The more I pull the reins, the more it kicks." The Buddha smiled and replied, "Then don't pull the reins. Walk beside it. When it runs, watch where it goes. When it stops, stand quietly beside it. Soon, it will know you are not its enemy." To walk beside the mind, that is the essence of awareness. When you are sad, walk beside your sadness. When you are restless, Walk beside your restlessness. Do not fight it and do not feed it. Simply notice it as it is, without labeling it as good or bad. The mind, when seen clearly, begins to calm itself. Awareness is like sunlight on a frozen lake. Slowly, gently, it melts what has been held too tightly. Sometimes, awareness appears in ordinary moments, washing dishes, walking in the park, waiting at a red light. You might suddenly realize that your thoughts have been spinning around a conversation from days ago. In that instant, without judgment, you can whisper to yourself, "Come back." That simple phrase is enough. It does not mean ignoring the problem or pushing away emotions. It means allowing yourself to rest in what is real right now. Every return strengthens a deeper understanding. The mind will always move, but you don't have to move with it. You can be the space that holds the movement. You can be the awareness behind the noise. In one of the early Buddhist discourses, the Buddha described this awareness as knowing clearly while breathing in, knowing clearly while breathing out. Nothing more complicated than that. It means that even the smallest act, like taking a breath, can become a doorway to awakening if done with presence. A teacher once said, "When you breathe, the whole universe breathes with you." Each inhale draws in not only air but also life itself. Each exhale releases not only carbon but also the heaviness you no longer need. Breathing consciously is a reminder that life continues to renew itself, moment by moment, breath by breath. There's a tenderness in this practice that cannot be forced. It grows with patience. Some days, returning feels effortless. Other days, it feels impossible. The mind will sometimes rebel. It will insist on revisiting old stories, old wounds, but awareness never condemns. It only observes. Imagine standing by a river, watching the water flow. Each thought is like a leaf drifting past. You don't need to stop the leaves, nor do you need to chase them. You simply stand still and watch them go by. That is the practice of returning. Not to stop the river, but to remember that you are not the river. You are the watcher on the bank. When you bring this awareness into daily life, it becomes a way of living gently. You begin to notice when your speech is rushed, when your tone grows sharp, when your heart tightens. Awareness gives you a small pause before you react. In that pause, compassion enters. You can choose to respond rather than to react. You can choose to breathe instead of explode. You can choose to be present instead of lost. There's another story told by a Zen master. A student asked, "Master, what do you do when your mind becomes noisy?" The master replied, "I listen more deeply." The student asked, "And when it becomes quiet?" The master smiled, "I keep listening." This is what awareness really is, a listening without demand. You are not listening to fix or to analyze. You are listening simply to be with what is. When the mind is noisy, you listen. When it's quiet, you still listen. Because awareness is not about silence, it is about intimacy with life. You can practice this intimacy anywhere. When you drink tea, feel the warmth against your hands. When you walk, notice the ground beneath your feet. When you speak, hear the sound of your own voice. Returning to the present does not mean you must live in a cave or abandon the world. It means you bring stillness into every movement, awareness into every act. Some people believe awareness will make them distant or detached, but true awareness brings you closer, closer to yourself, to others, to life. When you are aware, you notice the small details, the way sunlight rests on a table, the way someone's voice softens when they say thank you. Awareness deepens connection because it allows you to see without distortion. A. Restless mind sees everything through the fog of its own emotions, but a mind that returns again and again begins to see things as they are. It no longer adds unnecessary color to experience. It sees clearly, and in that clarity, there is peace. The Buddha once compared this to polishing a mirror. The mirror itself is never dirty, it only gathers dust. When you wipe away the dust, the reflection is clear again. The practice of returning is like this gentle polishing. Each time you notice distraction and come back, you remove a little dust. With patience, the mirror of your mind begins to shine with its natural brightness. You may wonder, will the mind ever stop wandering completely? Perhaps not. Even the most experienced meditators have thoughts. The goal is not to erase the mind, but to befriend it. When you befriend your mind, wandering thoughts lose their power to harm you. They become part of the landscape, clouds drifting across the sky. The sky does not fight the clouds, it simply holds them. Sometimes people ask, how do I know if I'm truly practicing awareness? The answer is simple. If you are kind to your wandering mind, you are practicing correctly. Harshness never brings stillness. Gentleness does. When you forgive yourself for drifting away, you create space to begin again. Every breath is another chance to begin again. In Zen poetry, there is a line that says, "The bird does not try to fly, flying happens." Awareness is like that. When we stop trying to control every moment, awareness happens naturally. Returning to the present is not an effort, it is the release of effort. It is what remains when we stop trying to be somewhere else. If you're listening to this now, take a slow breath. Feel it enter, feel it leave. Notice how your body follows the rhythm. You don't need to change anything, just stay. That's the heart of returning. To stay for one moment longer than your habit of running away. The monk with the flute eventually learned this secret. Each evening, he would sit and the music would return. Sometimes it was near, sometimes far, sometimes only memory. But now, instead of following the sound, he used it as a reminder. Every note of the flute became a bell of mindfulness, calling him back to the present. The same sound that once distracted him became the sound that awakened him. Life will always play its melodies, some sweet, some sorrowful. The mind will want to chase them, but through practice, you can learn to listen without leaving yourself. You can learn to return again and again to this breath, this body, this moment. Returning is not a punishment, it is a blessing. It means that no matter how far you've gone, peace is only one breath away. Awareness is the bridge that always leads you home. So, when you notice your mind drifting tonight, whether to a memory, a worry, or a dream, do not be harsh. Simply smile and say, "Ah, you're wandering again." Then, gently breathe and come back. Every return is an act of love. Every return is a quiet miracle. In the next part of this chapter, we will explore how to deepen this returning through the simplicity of breathing and the wisdom of gentle presence, as we learn how to calm the restless waves of the mind and find rest in the still waters beneath. Until then, let your awareness be soft and steady, like moonlight on a quiet lake, shining not to change what it touches, but to remind all things of their natural peace. Part 3. The Way to Calm. A simple 5-minute practice. Imagine sitting in a quiet room, the lights dim, the world softened into stillness. There is no need to do anything, no one to impress, nowhere to go. You simply sit, breathing gently, feeling the air move in and out of your body. At first, the mind will whisper, "This is boring. Nothing is happening." But slowly, something deeper begins to unfold. A quiet recognition that peace has been here all along, waiting beneath the noise. This is the heart of practice. Learning how to stop, how to breathe, how to simply be. It is not a complicated ritual or an ancient mystery. It is something profoundly human, the art of being present with yourself. The Buddha once said that mindfulness of breathing is the path to serenity and understanding. He taught that awareness of the breath connects body and mind, bringing us back to the moment where life is actually happening. So often, we are only half alive, the body in one place, the mind in another. But the breath unites them again. Let us begin simply. Sit comfortably. Allow your spine to be upright but not rigid. Rest your hands wherever they feel at ease. Close your eyes if that helps. Now take a slow breath in through your nose, feeling the air cool as it enters. Then release it gently through your mouth or nose, whichever feels natural. As you breathe, you may notice thoughts beginning to rise, memories, worries, small stories. That is perfectly fine. The mind is doing what the mind does. Do not push the thoughts away and do not chase them. Let them drift through like clouds across a sky that never loses its blue. Now, silently say to yourself, inhaling, I know I am breathing in. Exhaling, I know I am breathing out. Continue for a few moments. This simple acknowledgement is enough. Each time you name the breath, you are training awareness to stay here, to stay now. You might feel the chest expand with each inhale and relax with each exhale. You might feel the subtle movement of the abdomen, like gentle waves rising and falling. Let your attention rest there. You are not trying to control the breath. You are simply watching it. You are the witness, the loving observer of life itself, moving through you. There is a beautiful teaching from the Buddha that says, just as a mother watches over her only child, so should one cultivate a heart of care toward one's own breath. The breath is life, fragile, precious, ever-changing. Watching it with care is like holding the hand of your own existence. If your mind drifts away, simply notice and return. The return is not a failure, it is the practice. Each time you come back to the breath, you are building the muscle of awareness. You are learning patience, forgiveness, and love. After a few minutes, you might deepen the practice. As you inhale, silently say, breathing in, I calm my body. As you exhale, say, breathing out, I release tension. Repeat this slowly, letting the meaning sink into you. Feel how the body begins to soften. The shoulders drop, the jaw unclenches. The space behind the eyes feels open and light. You are teaching the body and the mind to rest together, to trust each other again. Next, you can bring awareness to the heart. Inhale and say softly, I know I am alive. Exhale and say, I smile to life. This is not a forced smile. It is a small gesture of kindness, a reminder that even amidst pain or uncertainty, life still flows through you. The smile is not for the world outside, it is for your own heart, the one that has carried you through so much. Sometimes, emotions may surface during this practice. Sadness, grief, even anger. That is natural. When we slow down, what has been buried often rises to the surface. Do not be afraid of it. If tears come, let them. If heaviness appears, breathe with it. You can even whisper, inhaling, I see my sadness. Exhaling, I hold it with compassion. This is what it means to transform suffering, not to push it away, but to embrace it with understanding. As the Buddha taught, when we know our suffering deeply, compassion naturally arises. The mind becomes like a still pond that reflects everything clearly. Sometimes, it helps to imagine your thoughts and emotions as guests arriving at your door. You do not have to invite them to stay, but you can greet them kindly. Hello, anxiety, I see you. Hello, loneliness, you're here again. As you greet them, they lose their power to overwhelm you. They become simply experiences passing through awareness. The breath is the host of this home. It remains steady while guests come and go. It does not judge or cling. It just keeps breathing. As the body settles, notice how your breath begins to change. It may become slower, lighter, almost invisible. The quieter the breath, the more spacious the mind becomes. You begin to sense a subtle joy, a calm that is not dependent on anything outside you. This is the joy of presence. Simple, quiet, and deeply nourishing. In Zen tradition, there is a saying, when you sit, just sit. When you breathe, just breathe. That simplicity holds profound wisdom. It means that peace is not found in doing more, but in being fully with what is already here. During this 5-minute practice, you may notice moments when the mind grows still. There are no thoughts, no judgments, no striving, only awareness. These moments may last only a few seconds, but they are glimpses of your true nature, open, clear, and untroubled. When distraction returns, and it will, meet it gently, smile inwardly and say, thinking. Then return to the breath. There is no need to analyze where the thought came from or why. Awareness does not need explanations. It only needs presence. With time, this practice becomes more than a few minutes of sitting. It becomes a way of living. You begin to carry the rhythm of the breath into everything you do. Washing dishes becomes meditation. Walking becomes meditation. Listening to someone with full attention becomes meditation. You no longer wait for peace, you live it. The Buddha described this as the middle way, not escaping the world and not drowning in it. Breathing, being, returning, again and again, until awareness becomes your home. If you wish, you can end each session with a small reflection. As you take your final breath, whisper softly to yourself. Inhale, gratitude. Exhale, peace. Then open your eyes. Look around. Notice the light, the colors, the space you occupy. The world has not changed, yet it feels different, gentler, clearer, more alive. What changed was your way of seeing. You brought stillness into the moment, and the moment responded. There is a simple story told by a meditation teacher. A student once asked, "How do I know when my meditation is working?" The teacher smiled and said, "When you start treating people more gently, that is the true measure of calm. Not how still you can sit, but how kind you become toward yourself, toward others, toward life." As you continue to practice, you might find that your reactions soften. The same situations that once triggered anger or fear now meet a gentler response. This is not weakness. It is strength in its most refined form, the strength to stay present instead of being swept away. The breath teaches us this strength. It never forces, never argues. It simply continues, moment by moment, reminding us that life itself is resilience. No matter how many times we lose our way, the next breath is always there to guide us back. If you ever feel overwhelmed, remember, peace is not far. It is as close as the next breath. Sit, breathe, return. 5 minutes is enough to begin. When you finish your practice, take a moment to thank yourself. Gratitude is a quiet bow to life, a recognition that even amidst uncertainty, you chose awareness over distraction, calm over chaos. And when you rise, carry this awareness into whatever comes next. Whether you are stepping into a meeting, washing your hands, or looking at the sky, pause for a heartbeat and feel the breath. Let it remind you, this, too, is a moment of life. The Buddha once said, "Peace comes from within, do not seek it without." These words are not a command but an invitation to trust that the calm you seek is already inside you, waiting to be noticed. So tonight, as you prepare to rest, take one last slow breath. Inhale deeply, feeling the fullness of being alive. Exhale softly, releasing the need to be anything more than this. Let the body settle, the mind rest, and the heart open. Peace is not something you must create. It is what remains when you stop trying to be elsewhere. The path of mindfulness begins with a single breath, and every breath that follows is a continuation of that awakening. Quiet, gentle, endless. In this calm, you are home. You are listening to a gentle teaching from the Moonlight Temple series, wisdom drawn from ancient Buddhist roots, brought to life with care and presence. To fully receive the heart of these teachings, I invite you now to pause, soften the edges of your day, let your body rest, take in a slow, quiet breath, and exhale into stillness. Allow your awareness to return, not to the past, not to the future, but to this very moment. Nothing else is required, just your presence. If this offering has brought you a moment of peace, we gently invite you to support this journey by subscribing to the Moonlight Temple, sharing these teachings, or simply returning again when your heart needs rest. Every small act of presence helps this temple of silence grow. Chapter 2. When the mind needs uplifting, lift it gently. Part 1. The gentle strength of uplifting the mind. There are moments in life when everything feels heavy. You wake up and the world seems dim, even when the sun is shining. The heart feels tired, not from work or effort, but from something deeper, a quiet ache that words cannot reach. It may come after loss, disappointment, or simply from carrying too much for too long. The truth is, even the kindest hearts can grow weary. Even the calmest minds can sink into sorrow. The Buddha understood this tender fragility within us. He knew that the human heart moves in waves, sometimes calm, sometimes wild, sometimes lost. He taught that when the mind needs uplifting, we must know how to lift it. To lift the mind is not to pretend that everything is fine. It is not to force a smile when the heart is aching. It is to recognize the pain without letting it spread, to touch sorrow with gentleness instead of resistance. When the Buddha spoke about suffering, he never denied it. He did not say, "Do not feel pain." He said, "Understand it." Understanding transforms pain into compassion. Avoidance turns pain into despair. When we see our sorrow clearly, we no longer drown in it. We learn to hold it, softly, as a mother holds her crying child. Imagine a small bird trapped inside a room. It beats its wings against the window, again and again, desperate to escape. The more it struggles, the more it hurts itself. Only when it pauses does it see the open door beside it. Our minds often behave the same way. When we struggle too hard against sadness, we miss the small openings that lead to peace. To uplift the mind is to pause, not to escape, but to breathe, to give yourself space to see again. The act of pausing allows light to return. It reminds us that joy and sorrow are not enemies. They are two sides of the same river, flowing together, each teaching us something about the other. Sometimes people think being uplifted means being positive all the time, pretending that pain does not exist. But the Buddha's way is not about pretending. It is about awakening. True upliftment begins with truth, the willingness to see clearly what is happening within us, and the wisdom to care for it kindly. A gentle smile, even through tears, can be a profound act of courage. It is a way of saying, I have not given up on myself. There is an old teaching in Buddhism that says, when a mind full of sorrow learns to rise, it becomes a source of strength for others. This means that every time you learn to soothe your pain instead of spreading it, you are practicing compassion. You are helping to stop the chain of suffering in the world. When we are caught in sadness, it often feels like the whole world has turned grey. But this is not the concept truth. It is only the mind's reflection. Just as clouds can hide the sun but cannot destroy it, our pain can obscure peace but cannot erase it. The sun of awareness is still there, waiting patiently behind the clouds. One day, the Buddha was walking with his disciples when they came upon a man sitting by the roadside, crying. His home had been destroyed by a storm, his family scattered. The man said to the Buddha, I have lost everything. The Buddha looked at him with compassion and said, you have lost what can be lost, but you still have what cannot be lost, the capacity to love, to understand, to begin again. The man did not understand at first, but the Buddha continued, when you lose something outside of you, look within. That which is lost is impermanent. That which looks is eternal. These words are gentle but powerful. They remind us that even in loss, there remains something untouched, the awareness that sees the loss. That awareness, that clarity, is the seed of resilience. It is the inner ground on which we can stand again. To lift the mind, then, is to reconnect with what is still whole within us. It is not about replacing grief with joy, but about remembering that grief does not define the totality of who we are. Beneath the wave of emotion, there is still the ocean, vast, deep, and calm. Sometimes, the simplest acts become bridges back to this calm. Taking a walk, feeling the earth beneath your feet, sitting quietly with a cup of tea, listening to a gentle piece of music that soothes rather than distracts. These are not small escapes. They are ways of returning to life, of letting the spirit breathe again. The Buddha once said, as rain breaks through a weak roof, so desire breaks through an untrained mind. But as rain cannot enter a well-thatched roof, so passion cannot enter a well-trained mind. The well-thatched roof of the heart is mindfulness, the ability to stay awake, to protect the inner home from the storms of emotion. To uplift the mind, we strengthen that roof by returning again and again to awareness, gratitude, and presence. Gratitude is a key to lifting the mind. When everything feels lost, gratitude shows us what remains. You may have lost comfort, but not the ability to breathe. You may have lost a dream, but not the capacity to hope. You may have lost someone you love, but not the love itself. That love still lives in you, transformed but alive. Each breath can become a small prayer of gratitude. Inhale, I am here. Exhale, thank you. This simple rhythm keeps the heart open. It tells the universe, I am still willing to see the good. Gratitude does not deny pain. It gives it context. It reminds us that even within suffering, life continues to offer small miracles. The sound of rain, the warmth of sunlight, the kindness of a friend's voice. When we cultivate gratitude, we begin to see beauty even in the ordinary. The same tree you pass every day becomes something to notice, the way the leaves shimmer, the way the light shifts through them. The same breath that once felt automatic becomes sacred. This shift in perception is what it means to lift the mind. In the Zen tradition, teachers often use small, quiet metaphors to explain great truths. One master said, "When you fall into a pit, use the earth beneath you to climb out." It means that the very thing that feels like your obstacle can become your teacher. If sadness arises, do not see it as an enemy. Use it to learn patience, to cultivate tenderness, to deepen understanding. Let sorrow become the soil from which compassion grows. To lift the mind is also to stop expecting happiness to come from perfection. Life will never be without difficulty. The Buddha's first teaching, the truth of suffering, is not meant to discourage us, but to free us from unrealistic expectations. Pain is not punishment. It is part of being alive. When we accept this, the heart relaxes. We no longer fight what is inevitable. Instead, we learn to walk gently with it. There is a quiet dignity in those who can suffer without bitterness. They are not numb, they are awake. They know that everything changes, that even the deepest grief has a rhythm. Like the tide, it comes and goes. When we remember this impermanence, we can hold sorrow without becoming it. Sometimes, the practice of uplifting begins with something as small as standing up and opening the window, letting fresh air touch your face, watching the light shift across the wall, whispering to yourself, "This moment is enough." These simple gestures are acts of self-compassion. They say to the weary heart, "You are allowed to rest. You are allowed to heal." The Buddha often reminded his disciples that inner transformation begins with small steps. He said, "Drop by drop, the water pot is filled. So it is with the wise person. Gathering little by little, they fill themselves with good." Uplifting, the mind works the same way. One small breath, one small smile, one small act of gratitude. Each drop of awareness fills the vessel of peace. We live in a world that glorifies constant strength, endless success, and external happiness. But spiritual strength is something quieter. It is the strength to fall and stand again, to cry and still love, to hurt and still choose kindness. This is the strength that lifts the mind. In times of darkness, remind yourself, "I am not my sadness. I am the awareness that feels it." This simple recognition changes everything. It transforms the narrative from "I am broken" to "I am healing." Awareness is the bridge that carries us from despair to resilience. To lift the mind is an act of love, love for yourself, love for life, love for truth. It does not demand that you erase pain, only that you hold it with a heart wide enough to contain it. And when you lift your own mind, even a little, you begin to lift the world around you. Your calm presence soothes others. Your quiet strength becomes a refuge. Like a candle that lights another without losing its own flame, your inner peace can spread far beyond what you imagine. So tonight, if your heart feels heavy, sit quietly for a moment, place a hand over your chest, and feel the rhythm of your breath. Tell yourself softly, "I am here. I am allowed to rest. I am learning to rise." Uplifting the mind is not an escape from life. It is a return to life. It is remembering that no matter how deep the night, the dawn always comes. And until it does, the light within you is enough to keep walking. As the Buddha said, "No one saves us but ourselves. No one can and no one may. We ourselves must walk the path." To lift the mind is to take that first compassionate step, to walk again, gently, with an open heart. Peace does not arrive suddenly. It grows quietly each time we choose understanding over despair, presence over distraction, and kindness over resistance. Every breath, every moment of awareness is another step toward lightness. And when the heart finally lifts, not because everything is fixed, but because you have learned how to breathe again, you will realize something beautiful. The sun was never gone. It was only waiting for the clouds to part. In this understanding, you find not just relief, but strength. A gentle strength, the kind that holds, endures, and shines softly, even in the darkest hour. Part 2. Stories of letting go and rising again. There was once a man who carried with him a small bag filled with precious rings. Each ring represented something dear to him: wealth, love, memories, pride. One afternoon, while crossing a river, the bag slipped from his hand and vanished beneath the rushing water. He jumped in, searching wildly, but the current was too strong. The rings were gone. He sat on the shore, trembling, feeling as though his whole world had disappeared with that bag. A wise monk, passing by, saw the man's despair and sat beside him. For a long moment, neither spoke. Finally, the monk said softly, "You have lost the rings with form. Now is the time to learn the ring without form, the ring of patience." The man looked up, confused. The monk continued, "The loss you feel is real, but not all treasures are made of gold. When the form is gone, the lesson remains. Let this loss teach you how to endure without bitterness, how to hold emptiness with grace." The man did not answer. He only stared at the river, where the water moved as if nothing had happened. Over time, though, he began to understand. The river did not keep what it took. It simply carried things along. It did not cling, did not mourn. Watching it, the man began to see that perhaps his grief, too, could flow. The story of the lost rings is not about wealth. It is about learning to accept what cannot be kept. In life, we all carry our own bags of rings, the people we love, the successes we hold dear, the identities we build. When one of those things is taken away, it feels as if a part of us is torn out. Yet the Buddha taught that what is taken away in form may still remain in spirit. When we lose the visible, we are invited to discover the invisible: patience, understanding, resilience. Patience, or khanti, in the teachings of the Buddha, is not passive waiting. It is active strength. It means staying present with what hurts, without letting it destroy our kindness. It is the ability to remain soft in a world that can be hard. In one of his discourses, the Buddha said that patience is the supreme austerity. Why? Because to endure with wisdom, without resentment, is one of the greatest forms of inner power. To bear what is difficult with a peaceful heart is to rise above the storm, even while standing in the rain. We may not be able to stop the storms of life, but we can choose how we stand in them. The one who knows patience stands steady, rooted like a tree. The wind may bend the branches, but it cannot uproot the roots. There is another story that echoes this truth. The story of a man who lost everything he owned. His village had caught fire one night, and by morning, all his possessions were ashes. The villagers gathered around him, expecting cries of despair. But the man smiled gently and said, "The things are gone, but I am still here." At first, people thought he was pretending to be strong. But days passed, and he continued to smile, working to rebuild his home, helping others who had also suffered loss. When someone asked him how he could remain calm, he replied, "I have seen that everything I had was borrowed from the world. It came into my life, stayed for a time, and now it has gone back. I have no anger toward what changes, only gratitude for what was given. This kind of peace may seem impossible, but it comes from deep understanding, from seeing impermanence not as a threat, but as truth. The Buddha's first teaching after his enlightenment was on the nature of suffering and the impermanence of all things. He said, "All conditioned things are transient. Strive on with awareness." To strive on with awareness means to keep walking, even through loss, but to walk without clinging. It is to know that every joy and every sorrow is part of a larger cycle. When we accept impermanence, we begin to love more freely, because we no longer hold with fear. The man who lost his house knew this truth. He understood that what remains, the breath, the body, the capacity to care, is already enough. That realization lifted his heart above his pain. Sometimes, we meet people who seem to carry this quiet wisdom naturally. They have known heartbreak and disappointment, but their eyes shine with gentleness, not bitterness. They are living examples of how the mind can rise even when the world falls apart. There is an old Zen saying, "The obstacle is the path." It means that every loss, every challenge, can become a teacher if we are willing to learn from it. When we resist pain, we add another layer of suffering. But when we meet it with openness, it begins to soften, and so do we. The Buddha once told a parable about a woman named Kisa Gotami. She lost her only child and was consumed by grief. In her desperation, she carried her child's body through the streets, begging for medicine that could bring him back to life. The Buddha met her and said, "Bring me a mustard seed from a house where no one has ever died." She went from home to home, but in every house, someone had known loss. Finally, she returned to the Buddha, empty-handed, but awakened. She realized that death and loss are universal, no one escapes them. In seeing this truth, her grief began to turn into compassion. The story of Kisa Gotami teaches us that sorrow is not unique to us. Every being suffers, and when we understand this, we stop feeling alone in our pain. Compassion begins to arise, and compassion is the most powerful medicine for a wounded heart. When we lose what we love, we have two choices: to close our hearts or to let them open wider. Closing feels safer at first, but it only deepens the ache. Opening hurts too, but it heals. Because through the opening, light enters. When you look at your own life, you may see moments that broke you, the end of a relationship, the passing of someone dear, the loss of something you worked for. These moments can become the soil for awakening. Every broken piece is a doorway. The question is not why we suffer, but how we choose to meet our suffering. A heart that learns to rise from loss is a heart that understands the truth of the Buddha's words. You cannot travel the path until you have become the path itself. Every tear, every difficulty becomes part of that journey. It is easy to speak of patience and acceptance, but in practice, they are acts of courage. To be patient in the face of loss is not weakness, it is faith. Faith not in a distant God or a promised reward, but in the simple truth that life continues, that peace can return. Sometimes, all we can do is breathe. One breath for the pain, one breath for the hope that someday the pain will ease. This small act is enough. Every breath is a bridge from despair to resilience. There's a saying from the Buddhist scriptures, "The mind is everything. What you think, you become." When we dwell on loss, the mind becomes heavy. When we dwell on gratitude, it becomes light. Lifting the mind does not mean ignoring the pain, but choosing not to live inside it forever. The man who lost his rings eventually found peace, not because he replaced what he had lost, but because he learned to value what could never be taken: his awareness, his compassion, his ability to begin again. The man who lost his home found peace because he understood that the self who observes loss is untouched by it. These stories are not far from our own. Each of us, in our own way, will face moments when life takes something we love. When that time comes, remember, what is essential is never lost. The qualities of the heart, kindness, courage, understanding, are beyond destruction. Even when everything outside changes, these inner treasures remain. If you sit quietly and listen, you can feel them, small, steady, unshaken. The mind may scream and the body may tremble, but somewhere beneath it all, a stillness remains. That stillness is your refuge. The Buddha once described this refuge as the island within. He said, "Be islands unto yourselves, be your own refuge, with no other refuge." It means that no matter what the waves of life take away, there is a shore within you that cannot be drowned. To find that shore, we practice turning inward, not to escape, but to remember. Remembering that the river flows, but the water remains water. The waves rise and fall, but the ocean stays vast. When you lift your mind in moments of despair, you are not denying reality. You are touching something deeper than circumstance. You are acknowledging that pain is temporary, but awareness is timeless. If you are listening to this and carrying a loss of your own, may these stories remind you, the heart that breaks is the heart that learns to love more deeply. The mind that falls can learn to rise again, slowly, gently, with patience. Each breath is a chance to begin again. Inhale, you are here. Exhale, you are free to start anew. The pain may not disappear immediately, but it will change shape. What once felt unbearable will one day become a memory, softened by wisdom. In time, you will look back and see that your sorrow was not an ending, but a teacher, that what you lost guided you toward what cannot be lost. And when you meet someone else in pain, you will know how to sit beside them quietly, without trying to fix them, simply holding space, because you, too, have walked through the fire and found your way home. This is the way of uplifting the mind, to let go of what cannot stay, to hold what cannot be taken, and to rise again, not as who you were, but as someone more open, more tender, more free. In this understanding, loss becomes the doorway to wisdom, and when you walk through that doorway, you do not leave your grief behind. You carry it gently, transformed into compassion. So breathe, and let this truth settle in your heart. When we lose what we hold, we find what truly holds us. That holding presence, that quiet awareness, is where the mind rises, again and again, into peace. You are listening to a gentle teaching from the Moonlight Temple series, wisdom drawn from ancient Buddhist roots, brought to life with care and presence. To fully receive the heart of these teachings, I invite you now to pause. Soften the edges of your day. Let your body rest. Take in a slow, quiet breath and exhale into stillness. Allow your awareness to return, not to the past, not to the future, but to this very moment. Nothing else is required, just your presence. If this offering has brought you a moment of peace, we gently invite you to support this journey by subscribing to the Moonlight Temple, sharing these teachings, or simply returning again when your heart needs rest. Every small act of presence helps this temple of silence grow. Part 3. The practice of uplifting daily life. There are days when the heart feels heavy for no clear reason. You might wake up already tired, as if some invisible weight is pressing on your chest. Perhaps nothing terrible has happened, and yet your spirit feels dim. It is in those quiet, ordinary moments that the practice of uplifting the mind becomes most needed, not through grand gestures or deep philosophy, but through simple, tender attention to life as it is. The Buddha once said, "If you light a lamp for someone else, it will also brighten your own path." To uplift your mind is not only an act of self-care, it is an offering to the world. The light you cultivate within becomes the light others walk by. When your heart is peaceful, your presence itself becomes medicine. Uplifting the mind begins with recognizing that joy is not found by chasing after it. It grows naturally when the soil of the heart is cared for. In the same way that flowers bloom when they are watered and given sunlight, the mind blossoms when it is nourished by awareness and gratitude. You cannot force joy to appear, but you can create the conditions for it to arise. When sadness comes, do not push it away. Sit beside it as you would sit beside a tired friend. Offer it your company instead of your judgment. You may say softly to yourself, "It's okay, I'm here." In that simple act of kindness, your heart begins to open. The heaviness does not vanish immediately, but it begins to soften. Sometimes, we think that spiritual practice means doing something extraordinary, meditating for hours, reading sacred texts, or renouncing worldly things. But often, it's in the smallest moments that awakening happens. Washing a dish with care, smiling at a stranger, listening fully to another person without planning your reply. These moments, when lived mindfully, become tiny seeds of light planted throughout the day. One simple practice is to take a gentle walk when you feel low. As you walk, let your attention rest on the soles of your feet, on the feeling of contact between your body and the earth. Feel the air on your skin. Notice the colors, the sounds, the quiet rhythm of your breath. You are not trying to reach anywhere. You are simply arriving in each step. Walking like this is not an escape from sadness. It is a way of coming home. Another way to uplift your mind is through the practice of gratitude. Each morning, before the day unfolds, pause and name 3 things you are thankful for. They do not have to be large. Perhaps the warmth of your coffee, the presence of someone you love, or even the breath that sustains you. Gratitude is not a denial of pain. It is a widening of perspective. It reminds you that even in darkness, there is still light. In the evenings, as the day draws to a close, you can reflect gently. What moments today brought me a sense of peace? It might be as simple as hearing laughter, seeing the sky change color, or sharing a kind word. By remembering these small blessings, you train the mind to notice goodness, even when it hides beneath the noise of daily life. There was once a monk who lived in a small hut by the forest. Every evening, he would sweep the floor of his hut before sitting in meditation. When asked why he swept every day when the hut was already clean, he said, "I sweep not because the floor is dirty, but because the mind gathers dust." We all gather dust, from worries, expectations, disappointments. Uplifting the mind is like sweeping the heart each day. It is a practice of clearing what no longer serves us, so that peace can return to its rightful place. When you are upset, remember to breathe. The breath is your anchor, your bridge between body and mind. A simple practice. Inhale slowly, feeling the air fill your chest. Exhale gently, letting go of the tension that clings to your shoulders, your thoughts, your heart. Repeat quietly, in this breath, I arrive. In this breath, I release. Even 3 mindful breaths can change the quality of your day. The Buddha once said that the mind is like a garden. If you do not tend to it, weeds of anger, fear, and restlessness will grow wild. But when you water it with mindfulness and compassion, beautiful flowers appear, understanding, patience, peace. You cannot control the weather of the world, but you can care for the garden within. Sometimes, to lift your mind, you must also step outside of yourself. Helping another person can be one of the most healing acts there is. When you share a meal, listen without judgment, or comfort someone in pain, you shift the focus from your own suffering to a wider compassion. This shift opens the heart. In giving warmth, you receive warmth. There is a story of a woman who came to the Buddha overwhelmed by grief. Her husband had died, and she could not stop crying. The Buddha told her to go into the village and bring him a small bowl of rice from any household that had never known sorrow. The woman went from door to door, but in every home, she heard stories of loss. A parent gone, a child sick, a dream unfulfilled. By the time she returned, she no longer carried rice, but she carried understanding. She said, "I see now that sorrow touches every house. I am not alone." This realization lifted her mind from isolation to connection. When we remember that everyone suffers, compassion arises naturally. We no longer feel singled out by life's difficulties. We begin to see that pain is not a punishment, but a passage, one that unites all beings in shared humanity. Uplifting the mind is also about balance. Sometimes we must rest, sometimes we must play, sometimes we must simply be. The modern world glorifies constant doing, but the heart heals through being still, being gentle, being honest about what it feels. If you can, find a small ritual each day that reminds you of peace. It could be lighting a candle at dusk, sitting quietly for 5 minutes before bed, or whispering a simple phrase of kindness, such as, "May I be peaceful, may others be peaceful." These small rituals create sacred pauses in the rush of life, small spaces where the soul can breathe. In the Buddha's teachings, there is a quality called mudita, sympathetic joy, the ability to feel happiness for the happiness of others. This, too, is a way of uplifting the mind. When you can celebrate another's good fortune without envy, your heart expands. The more you rejoice in the joy of others, the more joy you have for yourself. At times, you may find that laughter itself can be medicine. A light smile, a moment of humor, can break the spell of despair. To laugh does not mean to dismiss suffering. It means to remember that life contains more than pain. Even monks in monasteries laugh. Their laughter is soft, humble, full of life. They understand that joy, like sorrow, is part of awakening. In relationships, uplifting the mind becomes a shared practice. When one person in a family or group learns to stay calm, that calm ripples outward. The Buddha taught that a peaceful mind benefits not just the individual, but the whole community. One person's mindfulness can cool an entire room, just as one candle can light many others. Imagine this: your partner is upset, your child is anxious, your friend is overwhelmed. Instead of reacting, you take a slow breath. You listen, you soften your tone, you smile gently. In that moment, you become the anchor, the still point in the storm. You do not suppress emotion, you balance it. This is how peace spreads, quietly, from one steady heart to another. When the mind is uplifted, it sees clearly that life is both fragile and resilient. It learns to hold joy and sorrow in the same hand, knowing that both belong. You can lose what you love and still be whole. You can make mistakes and still be worthy. You can fall and still rise again. Uplifting the mind does not mean you will never feel sadness again. It means that sadness will no longer control you. It will visit like a guest, and when its lesson is complete, it will leave. The mind that knows this becomes spacious, like a vast sky that allows clouds to come and go without losing its blue. At night, before you sleep, you might whisper a quiet prayer for all beings. May all who suffer find peace. May all who are lost find light. May all hearts be lifted. Such prayers are not about belief, they are about connection. They remind you that you are part of a greater whole, that your peace contributes to the peace of the world. The Buddha once said, "Thousands of candles can be lighted from a single candle, and the life of the candle will not be shortened." When you lift your mind, you become that candle. Your calm, your kindness, your steadiness, these things light the way for others, even if you never know it. So let your practice be gentle. Do not demand that your mind be joyful all the time. Simply tend to it with care. When it droops, offer it rest. When it fears, offer it understanding. When it rises, offer it gratitude. This is how the mind learns to trust life again. You do not need to chase happiness. You only need to stop running from yourself. In the stillness of this moment, right where you are, everything you seek is already present. The breath, the heart, the awareness that sees. Breathe in and feel the weight in your chest soften. Breathe out and let a small smile return. This is the practice of uplifting. Simple, quiet, profound. When you uplift your own mind, you help lift the world. Every act of gentleness matters. Every moment of awareness is a step toward peace. And when enough of us choose to live this way, with calm hearts and compassionate minds, the collective suffering of the world begins to heal. So tonight, wherever you are, may you sit for a while in stillness. May you feel the softness of your breath, the warmth of your presence. May you remember that peace is not something to find, it is something to return to, something that has always lived within you. And when your heart lifts, even slightly, may that small light become a beacon for others. For in lifting yourself, you lift us all. Chapter 3. When the mind needs joy, open wide. Part 1. The wisdom of joy, finding light within sorrow. There is a kind of joy that doesn't shout, doesn't sparkle, doesn't even look like joy at first glance. It moves quietly, like sunlight filtering through clouds, or the warmth of a candle in a dark room. It's the kind of joy that doesn't come from everything going well, but from seeing clearly, from understanding deeply. This is the joy the Buddha spoke of, the joy that is born not from getting what we want, but from learning how to open our hearts, even when life doesn't go our way. Life gives us both sweetness and sorrow. Sometimes, both arrive on the same day. We may experience success in one part of our life and heartbreak in another. We may laugh in the morning and cry at night. The Buddha never said that we could escape suffering altogether. He said we could learn to live wisely within it. Joy, in this understanding, is not the opposite of sorrow. It is the space that sorrow cannot fill. It is the warmth that remains even when the fire has gone out. One day, a monk visited a woman who was very ill. Her body was weak and her breathing shallow, yet when he entered her small room, she smiled brightly. The monk asked softly, "My sister, you are suffering so much. How can you still smile?" She replied, "If I can smile, my children will not worry. My smile is my medicine, for them and for me." Her words were simple, yet they revealed something profound. She did not smile because she had forgotten her pain. She smiled because she saw something beyond it. Her smile was not denial, it was an act of compassion. It was wisdom in motion. In the Buddha's teaching, joy born from compassion is the most beautiful joy. When we feel compassion for ourselves, for others, for the world, our heart opens naturally. Even in pain, there is tenderness. Even in loss, there is love. Compassion transforms suffering into connection. It turns isolation into belonging. When the woman smiled despite her illness, she was practicing this kind of compassion. She understood that her peace could ease the fear in others. Her joy was not selfish, it was shared. There is a strength in this kind of gentle joy, a strength that doesn't come from pretending to be strong, but from knowing that even weakness has its sacred place. The Buddha once said that true joy comes from freedom, not from freedom of circumstances, but freedom of the heart. Freedom from resentment, freedom from resistance, freedom from the need for life to be perfect before we can love it. When we stop fighting reality, joy has space to appear. It may be quiet, fragile, or fleeting, but it is real. It is enough. Sometimes, we think joy must feel loud or dramatic, that it must look like celebration, laughter, achievement. But joy in the Buddhist sense is subtle, intimate, steady. It can arise while washing dishes, watching the rain, or sitting silently beside someone you love. It does not demand attention. It simply exists, waiting for us to notice it. The Buddha called this kind of joy piti, a joy that arises from understanding, from right seeing. It is not a reaction to pleasure, but a response to insight. When we see things as they are, impermanent, interconnected, constantly changing, we stop clinging so tightly. And when we let go, even a little, joy naturally enters. The woman's smile in her illness reminds us of this truth. When we accept what cannot be changed, when we meet it with love instead of resistance, a quiet peace begins to bloom. That peace is joy. There is another story that illustrates this same wisdom. A disciple once asked his teacher, "Master, how can I find joy when life is full of suffering?" The master poured tea into the student's cup until it overflowed, spilling onto the table. The student exclaimed, "Master, the cup is full." The teacher smiled and said, "So is your mind. When your mind is full of expectations, fears, and judgments, there is no room for joy. Empty it, and joy will pour in naturally." This story is not about ignoring life's challenges. It's about loosening our grip on how we think things should be. When we stop insisting that happiness must look a certain way, we discover that joy has been quietly waiting for us all along. It lives in the breath, in the moment, in the space between one heartbeat and the next. Sometimes, joy arrives disguised as surrender. It comes when we finally stop demanding that life explain itself. It comes when we let ourselves rest. It comes when we hold our pain gently, without trying to fix it. There's a Zen teaching that says, no snowflake ever falls in the wrong place. When we understand this, we begin to see that even our difficulties have purpose. Each experience, pleasant or painful, is part of the great unfolding of life. When we stop resisting this truth, gratitude begins to arise, and gratitude is the foundation of joy. In a monastery in the mountains, a young monk once complained to his teacher, "The winters here are too cold, the summers too hot, the work too hard." The teacher replied, "Then you have not yet learned to be happy." The monk frowned. "How can I be happy with so much discomfort?" The teacher smiled and said, When the cold comes, be fully cold. When the heat comes, be fully hot. When you sweep the floor, sweep with your whole heart. Joy comes not from avoiding discomfort, but from being one with thirst, whatever is. This teaching points to a deep truth. Joy is not found in controlling life, but in surrendering to it. When we are fully present, even the smallest moments can shine. The sound of a bird, the taste of water, the softness of a breeze. These are simple things, but when seen with awareness, they are enough to fill the heart. Joy does not require grand circumstances. It asks only for presence. In one of the Buddha's discourses, he compared the mind to a clear lake. When the waters are calm, they reflect the sky perfectly. But when the waters are disturbed, the reflection breaks. Joy, like reflection, is the natural state of a peaceful mind. When we practice mindfulness, by breathing, observing, returning, the mind begins to settle. Clarity returns. In that clarity, joy shines naturally. Sometimes, when we speak of joy, people feel guilty, as if being joyful means forgetting the pain of others. But the Buddha's joy is never careless. It is a joy that includes the suffering of the world, not one that denies it. It is a joy that says, even with all this sorrow, I choose to keep my heart open. Think again of the mother in her illness. Her smile did not erase her pain, it embraced it. It was not a mask, but a revelation, a reminder that suffering and joy can coexist. Just as the lotus grows out of mud, true joy grows out of our willingness to face life as it is. This kind of joy is not loud, but it is luminous. It does not depend on fortune, health, or praise. It depends only on the willingness to love what is here, even when it is fragile, even when it is fleeting. The Buddha taught that one who cultivates joy also cultivates liberation, because when the heart knows how to rejoice in the midst of uncertainty, nothing can truly imprison it. Joy makes the mind spacious. It dissolves the walls of fear and isolation. You can practice this right now. Take a slow, deep breath. Feel the air entering your lungs. Notice how life continues, moment by moment, without you having to control it. There is already a miracle happening. Breath, awareness, existence. You don't need to create joy. You only need to notice it. Sometimes, we think that to be spiritual means to be serious. But joy is also a sacred practice. The Buddha smiled often. His smile was gentle, not because everything was easy, but because he had seen deeply into the nature of life. He saw that joy and sorrow are intertwined, and that both lead us toward understanding. To live with joy is to live with wisdom. It is to know that nothing is truly ours to keep, not our successes, not our failures, not even our bodies. And yet, while we are here, we can still love deeply, laugh sincerely, and give fully. When the heart opens in this way, joy becomes effortless. It flows like water. It doesn't need to be forced or protected. It simply moves through you, and through you, into the world. Imagine for a moment that every smile you give, every kind word you speak, every small act of patience you offer is a drop of cool water falling into the collective river of life. The more water there is, the more the world becomes a place of ease. Your personal joy nourishes not only you but everyone you meet. This is why the Buddha said that joy is one of the great powers of the heart. It has no boundary. It ripples outward endlessly. When your heart is joyful, others can feel it. It is not a loud joy. It is a quiet fragrance that fills the air wherever you go. You do not need to wait for perfect conditions to be joyful. You can begin right now, in this breath, in this moment, with whatever life has given you. Look around and see, the world is not perfect, but it is alive. The sky, the wind, the people around you, all are fleeting, all are precious. When you practice joy in this way, you are not escaping life. You are embracing it fully. You are saying to the universe, even here, even now, I choose to love. And that choice, simple, brave, sincere, is the very essence of wisdom. So when your mind feels weary, when the world feels uncertain, remember the woman who smiled through her illness. Remember that joy does not require the absence of pain. It only requires the presence of understanding. In that understanding, your heart can open, wide enough to hold both tears and laughter, both sorrow and peace. That is the wisdom of joy. It is not found by escaping life, but by opening fully to it. It is not found by denying pain, but by seeing that pain too can be embraced with love. When the mind knows this joy, even suffering becomes soft. The heart no longer contracts, it expands. And through that expansion, you touch the quiet, radiant truth. Joy is not something to find. It is what you become when you finally stop closing. You are listening to a gentle teaching from the Moonlight Temple series, wisdom drawn from ancient Buddhist roots, brought to life with care and presence. To fully receive the heart of these teachings, I invite you now to pause. Soften the edges of your day. Let your body rest. Take in a slow, quiet breath and exhale into stillness. Allow your awareness to return, not to the past, not to the future, but to this very moment. Nothing else is required, just your presence. If this offering has brought you a moment of peace, we gently invite you to support this journey by subscribing to the Moonlight Temple, sharing these teachings, or simply returning again when your heart needs rest. Every small act of presence helps this temple of silence grow. Part 2. Seeing with the Heart. The story of inner light. There are many kinds of sight. The eyes can look, but it is the heart that truly sees. The eyes can recognize form and color, but only the heart can recognize truth. The Buddha once said, "Those who see with wisdom see reality as it is, not as they wish it to be." When we begin to see with the heart, not through judgment, but through understanding, we discover a kind of joy that no outer circumstance can take away. There was once a woman who had been blind since birth. She lived in a small village where she spent her days sitting near the temple, listening to the sound of bells and the footsteps of monks. She could not see the sunlight, nor the faces of her loved ones, but her heart was gentle and bright. One day, a traveling monk came to visit the village. When he met the woman, he asked softly, "My sister, do you ever wish you could see the world?" She smiled and said, "Of course, sometimes, but I already see what matters most." The monk was curious. "What is it that you see?" "I see kindness," she said. "I hear it in the voices of children laughing. I feel it in the hands that help me cross the road. I sense it in the quiet breath of those who meditate nearby. I may not see with my eyes, but my heart sees light everywhere." The monk was silent for a while. Then he said, "You have something many who can see do not, the sight of wisdom. This story is a mirror for all of us. Many people have perfect vision yet walk in darkness, blinded by comparison, anger, or fear. They look but do not see. They move through life chasing images, missing the truth that is always near. The blind woman, though deprived of physical sight, had awakened to something far deeper. Her joy was not dependent on what her eyes could find. It arose from what her heart understood. To see with the heart means to look beyond appearance. It means to see the shared humanity in every face, even the ones that frown at you. It means to see the impermanence behind every joy and every sorrow, to know that everything changes, and therefore everything is precious. When the heart sees like this, it cannot help but feel compassion, and compassion, in its pure form, gives birth to joy. There is a line in the teachings that says, "When wisdom arises, sorrow fades." This does not mean sorrow disappears. It means sorrow is seen for what it is, a passing wave in a vast ocean. When we no longer mistake the wave for the whole sea, we stop drowning in it. We begin to float. That floating, light, effortless, gentle, is joy. The woman in the story could have chosen bitterness. She could have seen her blindness as punishment or her life as unfair. Instead, she turned her limitation into a doorway. She learned to listen deeply, to feel, to sense the subtle movements of life. Every sound became a teacher, every silence a meditation. Her blindness became her path to awakening. We all have moments of blindness, times when we cannot see clearly because the mind is clouded with emotion. Anger blinds us, fear blinds us, desire blinds us. These inner storms make us forget that beneath the clouds, the sky is always clear. To see with the heart is to remember that sky, to trust that even when everything seems dark, the light has not gone anywhere. The Buddha once compared the awakened mind to a lamp shining in a cave. The cave may be vast and dark, but even a single flame can reveal its shape. In the same way, even a small moment of awareness can bring clarity to confusion. Awareness does not need to be perfect. It only needs to be sincere. The heart that seeks truth, even imperfectly, is already seeing. When we begin to see with the heart, the world changes, not because the world becomes different, but because our perception softens. A difficult person becomes a teacher in patience. A challenge becomes a lesson in endurance. Even pain becomes a reminder of impermanence. This does not mean we enjoy suffering, but that we stop fighting reality. When the heart accepts, peace follows. There is a story in the Buddhist tradition about two monks walking through the forest. They came upon a woman struggling to cross a muddy stream. One of the monks, without hesitation, lifted her and carried her across. After setting her down, he continued on his way. Hours later, the other monk said, "Brother, we monks are not supposed to touch women. Why did you carry her?" The first monk smiled gently and said, "I set her down hours ago. Why are you still carrying her?" To see with the heart is to let go like that, to see the act of kindness for what it is, to release the need to cling to the past, to stop holding on to judgment or guilt. The moment we put down what burdens us, the heart becomes light again. That lightness is joy. There is a simple but powerful truth in the teachings. The world reflects the state of our mind. If we look through anger, the world appears harsh. If we look through fear, the world feels unsafe. But when we look through understanding, the world becomes compassionate. We cannot always change the outer world, but we can always soften the inner lens through which we see it. The blind woman's joy came from that softness. Her world was filled not with shapes and colors, but with connection. She heard life, not as noise, but as music. The rustle of leaves, the hum of insects, the laughter of strangers, all of it was part of one great rhythm. She was not separate from the world, she was part of it. and in that oneness, she found peace. When we see with the heart, even suffering begins to lose its sharpness. We realize that pain is not personal, it is part of being human. Everyone suffers, everyone struggles, everyone longs to be free. When this understanding deepens, compassion arises naturally. Compassion says, "May you be free from suffering, even toward those who have hurt us." That wish, sincere and humble, begins to transform both giver and receiver. The Buddha taught that compassion and joy are inseparable. Joy without compassion can become shallow, a kind of happiness that depends on conditions. Compassion without joy can become heavy, as if we carry the suffering of the world without rest. But when compassion and joy walk together, they balance each other. Compassion keeps joy grounded in kindness. Joy keeps compassion from despair. So how can we begin to see with the heart in daily life? It begins with presence. When you look at someone, truly look. See beyond their words, their moods, their roles. See the vulnerability behind their defenses. See the longing behind their anger. Everyone you meet carries invisible stories, silent prayers. When you see this, judgment begins to dissolve. The heart opens naturally. You can practice this right now. Think of someone who has been difficult for you. Instead of focusing on what they did wrong, try to imagine what might have caused their pain. What might they be carrying? What fear, what loneliness, what misunderstanding? As you breathe in, silently say, "I see your suffering." As you breathe out, say, "May you find peace." This simple act transforms your perception, from seeing an enemy to seeing another being caught in the same web of life as you. The blind woman's words echo here, "I do not need to see with my eyes, as long as I can see with my heart." This is the essence of inner light, to perceive life not through the filter of separation, but through the truth of connection. The Buddha once said, "Hatred never ends through hatred, it ends through love." This is the same principle. When the heart sees clearly, it cannot hate. It can only understand. And understanding, when deep enough, always becomes love. There is a beauty in this way of seeing that cannot be described, only felt. It is like suddenly noticing how still the air becomes after a storm. Nothing has been added to the world, and yet everything feels brighter. The trees, the ground, even the silence seem alive. That is how the heart feels when it truly opens. Alive, tender, aware. Joy, then, is not something we chase. It is what naturally rises when the clouds of judgment and fear clear away. When the heart is unobstructed, joy shines through like sunlight after rain. If you close your eyes now and take a breath, you might feel a small flicker of that joy, the simple joy of being alive, of hearing, breathing, existing. It doesn't matter what troubles you carry. Beneath them, there is still a pulse of life, gentle and steady. That pulse is your reminder that you belong here, that you are part of something vast and compassionate. Seeing with the heart also means seeing yourself kindly. Often, we speak gently to others, but harshly to ourselves. We say, "I should be better, calmer, stronger." But the Buddha's teaching reminds us that understanding begins at home. When you see your own suffering with compassion, transformation begins. When you forgive yourself for being human, your light becomes softer, more authentic. A teacher once said, "When the heart is kind to itself, the whole world becomes kinder." This is not a poetic exaggeration. It is a truth you can experience. Your energy, your words, Your very presence ripple outward. Others feel it. When your eyes carry understanding, others feel safe to unfold. When your heart carries joy, others remember their own. The woman in the story lived her whole life without sight, yet those around her said she made the world brighter. Her blindness did not limit her, it liberated her. She was not distracted by appearances, so she could feel essence. Her laughter was soft but radiant. People said that sitting beside her felt like sitting near sunlight. That is the power of inner vision. In the end, to see with the heart is to live with trust. Trust that even when the path is dark, it still leads somewhere meaningful. Trust that even when you cannot see, you are still guided by wisdom. Trust that every being, no matter how lost, carries a spark of awakening waiting to shine. When you see this, not with your eyes but with your whole being, the world itself begins to glow. Trees look more alive. People seem more real. The ordinary becomes sacred. You no longer need constant happiness to feel joy, because joy now lives quietly inside you, like a hidden lamp that never goes out. So if today feels dark, remember the woman who could not see but still saw light. Let her remind you that vision is not in the eyes, but in the awareness that looks through them. Close your eyes for a moment. Take a breath. Feel the light already there, soft, steady, compassionate. That is the heart seeing. That is wisdom. That is joy. Part 3. The practice of joy. Living with an open heart. There are days when joy feels far away, as if it belongs to another world. The heart grows tired. The body moves through routine, and the mind whispers that joy is something we must wait for, something that will come only when everything is finally in order. But joy does not belong to perfection. It belongs to presence. It lives not in the future we imagine, but in the breath we are breathing now. The Buddha taught that joy, or mudita, is one of the 4 great states of the awakened heart, along with loving kindness, compassion, and equanimity. Mudita is often translated as sympathetic joy or rejoicing in the happiness of others. Yet at its deepest level, it means something more intimate. It is the ability to open the heart so wide that both your own happiness and the happiness of others flow freely through it. It is the joy that comes from connection, the recognition that every smile, every act of goodness, every breath of peace in the world contributes to the well-being of all. To practice joy is to remember that it is already within you. Just as the moon does not disappear on cloudy nights, joy does not vanish when sorrow visits. It only hides behind the clouds of fear, comparison, or longing. The practice of joy is not about chasing the light. It is about learning to rest patiently until the clouds pass. There was once a monk who lived alone in a forest monastery. His life was simple: 1 robe, 1 bowl, 1 hut. Each morning, he would walk into the nearby village to receive food offerings. He smiled at everyone he met, even those who ignored him. Some villagers mocked his silence, others bowed with respect. He accepted all with the same heart. One day, a curious villager asked, "How can you be so joyful when you have nothing?" The monk looked up and said, "I have everything I need, this breath, this step, this sky." He then added softly, "Joy is not in having, it is in seeing. When I see that each moment is a gift, how can I not smile?" His words are a gentle reminder. Joy arises not from what we possess, but from how we perceive. The more we learn to see life as it is, fleeting, fragile, miraculous, the more easily joy flows. Sometimes joy comes quietly, through the simplest acts. The warmth of sunlight on your face, the scent of rain on the earth, the laughter of a friend. These moments are small, yet they are sacred. When you pause long enough to notice them, you are already practicing joy. The Buddha once said, "A wise person delights in the happiness of others as though it were their own." This is the essence of mudita, the capacity to rejoice not only in your own blessings, but in the blessings of the world. When you see someone succeed, be glad for them. When you see kindness, celebrate it. Every bit of joy that exists in the world belongs to all of us, because we are not separate from one another. There is a story of a young man who came to the Buddha filled with jealousy. "Master," he said, "I try to be good, but when I see others prosper, I feel bitterness in my heart. Why do they have what I do not?" The Buddha listened patiently, then asked him to fetch a handful of salt. When the man returned, the Buddha told him to put the salt into a small cup of water. "Now drink," he said. The man took a sip and grimaced. "It's too salty," he said. Then the Buddha asked him to throw the same handful of salt into the nearby river and drink again. The man drank, and this time the water tasted fresh. "Do you see?" said the Buddha. "The amount of salt has not changed, but the water is different. The more spacious your heart, the less bitterness can harm you. Learn to be like the river, vast, open, able to receive everything without losing your sweetness." The man bowed deeply. In that moment, he understood that joy grows with the openness of the heart. When the heart is small, even a little envy poisons it. When the heart is wide, it can contain the whole world. To live with joy, then, is to keep expanding the heart. Every act of gratitude, every smile, every forgiveness is a way of widening that space. You can begin the practice of joy right where you are. Start by noticing one thing you appreciate, not something extraordinary, just something true. The breath moving in your chest, the color of the sky, the sound of your own heartbeat. These simple things are the foundation of joy. They remind you that you are alive, that life continues to offer itself to you moment by moment. Gratitude and joy are sisters. Gratitude opens the door. Joy walks in. When you feel disconnected, try whispering softly, "Thank you." You don't need to know who you are thanking. Just acknowledge the miracle of being here. Gratitude brings the mind back to what is real. It transforms "I don't have enough" into "I already have so much." In daily life, joy also grows through kindness. Every time you ease someone's pain, even in a small way, joy takes root. When you hold a door open, offer a smile, or listen without interrupting, you create ripples that spread beyond what you can see. The Buddha said, "If you knew what I know about the power of giving, you would not let a single meal pass without sharing it." Generosity is not limited to material things. It can be as simple as giving time, attention, or a gentle word. When we give, we remember our interconnection, and that remembrance brings joy. There's a quiet beauty in understanding that joy does not exclude sorrow, it includes it. To live with an open heart means to allow everything to belong, the laughter, the tears, the uncertainty. When we close off our pain, we also close off our joy. But when we open to both, life becomes whole. A teacher once said, "The heart that breaks open can contain the entire universe." When we allow ourselves to feel fully, to grieve, to love, to hope, to forgive, we discover that our capacity for joy expands in equal measure. You might notice this in your own life. After times of great loss, even small joys feel radiant. The warmth of sunlight, the touch of a loved one, the sound of rain. Suffering refines the heart, not by destroying it, but by softening it. The more deeply you have felt sorrow, the more deeply you can feel joy. The Buddha often compared the enlightened heart to a lotus flower. The lotus grows in muddy water, yet it rises above the surface, untouched by the mud. Joy, too, grows in the midst of life's messiness. It does not need perfect conditions to bloom. It only needs openness. When you practice joy, you are not trying to force happiness. You are practicing trust. Trust that even in imperfection, life is still sacred. Trust that the heart knows how to heal if given time. Trust that what is painful today may become tomorrow's wisdom. Each evening, you can nurture this trust with a simple reflection. As you lie down to rest, recall one thing that brought you warmth during the day. It could be a conversation, a kind gesture, or a moment of stillness. Hold that memory gently in your mind and whisper, "Thank you." Then, silently wish well to someone else. May you be peaceful. May you be free from fear. This act of goodwill keeps your heart open, even as you sleep. The more you practice like this, the more natural joy becomes. It stops being something you search for and becomes something you live from. It becomes the quiet pulse beneath every action, the smile behind your words, the calm in your gaze, the patience in your waiting. The Buddha once smiled when asked, "What is your religion?" He replied, "My religion is kindness." But kindness and joy are never separate. Joy is the fragrance of kindness. When you care for others, when you wish them well, joy follows naturally, not as a reward, but as a reflection of the open heart itself. Joy also has a protective quality. It shields the mind from despair. When you cultivate joy, you create resilience, not through denial, but through wisdom. You begin to see that no matter how dark the night, dawn always returns. The heart that remembers this truth cannot be defeated. In relationships, joy becomes a shared practice. When one person in a family, a team, or a community knows how to stay joyful, their energy uplifts everyone else. This is why the Buddha taught that joy is a gift we give to others as much as to ourselves. A joyful presence calms those around it, reminding them of their own capacity for light. When you smile at someone, you may never know how deeply that small act reaches them. Perhaps they are struggling quietly, perhaps they feel unseen, and your smile, simple as it is, becomes a lifeline. The energy of joy moves beyond words. It touches the unseen places in others, the same way sunlight touches flowers that never ask for it. To live with an open heart is to let this joy flow naturally. It is to be generous with warmth, without expecting anything in return. It is to be kind, even when no one is watching. It is to trust that every act of love contributes to the healing of the world. If you wish to deepen this practice, you might begin each morning with a single intention. May my joy bring peace to others. Then, throughout the day, remember this intention whenever you feel distracted or discouraged. A simple breath can reconnect you. Breathe in and feel gratitude for being alive. Breathe out and send goodwill to all beings. This is the rhythm of a joyful heart. Joy does not need to be grand. It can be the quiet strength of continuing, the gentle courage of opening again and again, no matter how many times the world closes you. When the mind learns this way of joy, it becomes like a lamp in the night, steady, kind, unwavering. It illuminates without demanding attention, and in its glow, others remember that they, too, carry light. So tonight, as you listen, let yourself soften. Let your breath slow. Feel the quiet hum of life within you. Somewhere inside, there is a smile waiting to rise, not because everything is perfect, but because you are here, and this moment is alive. This is the practice of joy, to open the heart wide enough to hold both pain and beauty, to love the world as it is, and to trust that every breath is an invitation to begin again. When you live like this, joy ceases to be something you seek. It becomes the way you see, and through that vision, the whole world begins to shine. You are listening to a gentle teaching from the Moonlight Temple series, wisdom drawn from ancient Buddhist roots, brought to life with care and presence. To fully receive the heart of these teachings, I invite you now to pause. Soften the edges of your day. Let your body rest. Take in a slow, quiet breath and exhale into stillness. Allow your awareness to return, not to the past, not to the future, but to this very moment. Nothing else is required, just your presence. If this offering has brought you a moment of peace, we gently invite you to support this journey by subscribing to the Moonlight Temple, sharing these teachings, or simply returning again when your heart needs rest. Every small act of presence helps this temple of silence grow. Chapter 4. When the mind needs letting be and letting go. Know when to stay. Know when to release. Part 1. The wisdom of staying. Finding peace where you are. There are moments in life when our hearts ache to be somewhere else, anywhere but here. We want the moment to pass, the feeling to disappear, the pain to loosen its grip. We tell ourselves that peace lies just beyond the next achievement, the next answer, the next change. But the Buddha gently reminds us, peace is not found by running, it is found by staying. To stay does not mean to give up. It means to stop chasing after what isn't here and to turn toward what is. It is a return, not to something external, but to the stillness that has always been waiting inside. This is the wisdom of staying. In the Buddha's teaching, the word for staying is sati, mindfulness, presence, awareness. It means to rest the mind in the reality of this moment, without drifting into the storms of past and future. When we learn to stay, even for a few breaths, the world begins to soften. We see that nothing is as unbearable as our resistance to it. There is a story told of a young monk who went to his teacher in frustration. "Master," he said, "I meditate every day, but my mind won't stay still. It runs everywhere. I try to control it, but the more I try, the more restless it becomes. When will I find peace?" The master looked at him kindly and replied, "Peace will find you when you stop trying to escape yourself." The young monk didn't understand at first. He thought peace would come through effort, through mastering techniques, perfecting posture, conquering the mind. But what his teacher was pointing to was something simpler and far more profound. Peace comes when you stop struggling against your own experience. So often, we make war with our moments. When sadness comes, we push it away. When anger arises, we suppress it. When joy appears, we cling to it, fearing it will vanish. And in all this struggle, we forget the simple act of staying, of letting the heart rest in what is happening, exactly as it is. The Buddha taught that suffering begins when we resist reality. He called this resistance dukkha, the tension that arises from wanting life to be different from how it is. To stay, then, is to drop the fight. It is to breathe with what's here, not because it's pleasant, but because it's real. When you stay, you stop adding layers of judgment to the moment. You stop telling yourself, "This shouldn't be happening," or "I shouldn't feel this way." You begin, instead, to whisper, "This too belongs." There is a deep tenderness in those words. When we allow things to belong, even discomfort, confusion, and loss, we discover an unexpected peace. The heart opens not because everything is perfect, but because we have stopped demanding that it be. One evening, the Buddha was sitting with his disciples under the shade of a banyan tree. A man approached, weary and restless. "Teacher," he said, "my mind is full of noise. I can't find peace anywhere. What should I do?" The Buddha asked him, "Where are you right now?" The man looked confused. "I am here, of course." The Buddha smiled gently. "No, your body is here, but your mind is traveling. Bring it home." To bring the mind home, that is the heart of staying. It means gathering the scattered pieces of ourselves and allowing them to rest in the present moment. When we are truly here, fully here, life ceases to feel like a burden. Even simple things, the warmth of tea, the sound of rain, the rhythm of breath, becomes sacred. Yet staying is not easy. The modern world teaches us to move, to fix, to achieve. We scroll, rush, and reach endlessly for distraction. Silence feels uncomfortable. Stillness feels unnatural. But if we look closely, we see that all this running only deepens our exhaustion. We become tired not from doing too much, but from never stopping long enough to arrive. To stay is an act of courage. It means facing what we usually avoid, our thoughts, our feelings, our fears. It means being gentle with them instead of trying to outrun them. When you stay, you realize that nothing inside you is as frightening as your avoidance of it. The wave looks enormous when you're running away, but when you stand still and breathe, you see it pass. The Buddha compared the mind to a lake. When the water is stirred, you can't see your reflection, but when it is still, everything becomes clear. Staying is the way we let the mud settle. It doesn't mean we force calmness. It means we stop stirring. Sometimes, people think staying means accepting things that harm them. But true staying is not submission, it is awareness. To stay is not to endure abuse or remain in ignorance. It is to see clearly what is happening, inside and out. Awareness brings choice. When you are present, you know what needs to change and what needs to be released. When you are absent, you react blindly. The wisdom of staying gives birth to discernment. It teaches us the difference between holding and clinging, between patience and passivity. When you stay, you begin to understand the right timing of life, when to move, when to rest, when to speak, when to be silent. There is an old saying, "Don't just do something, sit there." It sounds humorous, but it carries a deep truth. In sitting still, we learn to see the world clearly. We learn that so much of our suffering comes not from the world itself, but from our impatience with it. Imagine standing on the shore, watching the waves crash and retreat. Each wave rises, peaks, and falls back into the sea. You don't need to chase them or fight them. You simply stand and watch. The waves are not separate from the ocean, and your thoughts are not separate from your mind. When you observe without resistance, you realize that all things, even discomfort, are movements within something vast and still. To stay, then, is to rest in that vastness. It is to recognize that beneath every thought, emotion, and experience lies a still awareness untouched by change. The Buddha called this awareness the unshaken mind, the mind that abides in understanding. You can practice this anywhere. When you drink water, just drink. When you walk, just walk. When you listen, just listen. These simple acts become profound when performed with full presence. In the monastery, the monks often say, "Wash the bowl completely." It means to be one with what you are doing, no matter how ordinary. When washing a bowl, Just feel the water, the motion, the sound. Don't rush to finish so you can move on to the next thing. Life is not waiting at the next task. It is here, in the small act itself. A teacher once told his students, "If you can't find peace washing dishes, you won't find it sitting on a mountain." Because peace is not a place, it's a relationship with the moment. Sometimes, staying simply means allowing yourself to rest. Not everything needs to be solved tonight. Not every worry requires an answer right now. You can let your thoughts pass through you like wind through trees. You can trust that the clarity you need will come when the mind is quiet enough to hear it. The Buddha said, "The past is already gone. The future is not yet here. There's only one moment for you to live, this one." When we truly absorb this, we realize how much of life we miss while waiting for it to begin. Staying brings us home to this breath, this body, this heartbeat. It invites us to live deeply, not widely, to experience one small thing fully, rather than chase 1,000 things halfway. When we stay, gratitude naturally arises. We begin to notice what we once overlooked. The way sunlight touches a leaf, the rhythm of rain on the roof, the warmth of another's voice. These are not small things. They are the texture of life itself. In the silence of staying, life reveals its quiet generosity. We realize that the present moment is not empty, it is full. Full of sound, movement, color, emotion, breath. Full of opportunities to awaken. But staying is also about kindness. When you stay with yourself, you learn to be gentle with your imperfections. You see that your fears, your sadness, your confusion are not mistakes. They are parts of being human. The heart expands when it no longer needs to be perfect. One evening, a monk asked his teacher, "How do I learn to love myself?" The teacher replied, "Stay with yourself long enough to know who you are." This is perhaps the most profound practice of all, to stay not only with our experiences, but with ourselves. We are often so busy trying to become someone that we forget to be who we already are. When we stay, we rediscover our own goodness, quiet, steady, unconditional. There is peace in knowing that you don't have to fix everything. You can sit, breathe, and simply say, "This moment is enough." And in that acceptance, something miraculous happens. The tension softens, the mind clears, and the heart opens. The wisdom of staying is not glamorous. It doesn't promise instant bliss. It asks only for patience and trust. Trust that if you remain steady, the river of life will carry you exactly where you need to go. So tonight, if your thoughts are restless, if your heart feels scattered, pause. Feel the ground beneath you. Feel the rise and fall of your breath. Whisper to yourself, "I am here. I am allowed to rest." Because when the mind learns to stay, peace no longer needs to be found. It simply returns. And in that return, you discover something luminous. You were never lost. You were only waiting to come home. Part 2. The Art of Letting Go, the Teacher, and the Hot Cup of Water. There are times in life when the hardest thing to do is to loosen our grip. We cling to the past, to people, to plans that never unfolded the way we hoped. We cling even to our pain, because at least it feels familiar. But the Buddha's teaching reminds us, freedom begins the moment we stop holding what is burning our hands. Letting go is not weakness, it is wisdom. It is not the act of turning away, but the art of knowing when holding on is no longer love, but suffering. One day, a student came to his teacher, trembling with confusion. He had been trying to meditate, yet his mind was full of anger. He wanted to understand why he couldn't find peace. The teacher silently poured hot water into a small cup and handed it to him. The student took it, holding it carefully as the heat began to sting his fingers. The teacher kept watching, saying nothing. A minute passed. The student shifted uncomfortably. The water was too hot now. Finally, the teacher asked gently, "Why are you still holding it?" The student looked down, embarrassed. "I don't want to spill it," he said. The teacher smiled softly. "My dear, it's not the cup that hurts you, it's the holding." He placed the cup down, and for the first time, the student understood. We hold on to so many things in the same way: old memories, grudges, expectations, identities. We convince ourselves that if we just keep holding on, somehow the pain will make sense. But the truth is, the mind can burn just as easily as the hand. The heat of attachment scorches slowly, quietly, until we forget what it feels like to be free. The Buddha often spoke about this tendency of the human heart, the instinct to grasp, to possess, to keep. He called it upadana, the clinging that fuels suffering. We cling not because we are bad or foolish, but because we long for security. We believe that if we hold tightly enough, the world will stay still. But life, by its very nature, moves. Everything changes. Everyone changes. The seasons of our existence do not ask for permission to shift. Letting go, then, is not rejection of life, but acceptance of its flow. It is the humility to say, this, too, belongs to impermanence. There is another story told of a father and his son. The father was a successful craftsman, respected and self-made. He worked tirelessly to provide for his family, and his son admired him deeply. As the boy grew, the father wanted to teach him the value of work and responsibility. So one day, he gave his son a small project: to craft a wooden bowl by himself. The boy tried, but failed repeatedly. The father watched him struggle, aching to help. Each time the boy's hands trembled, the father wanted to reach out and guide him, but he stopped himself. He knew that if he always intervened, his son would never find his own strength. Days later, the boy came running to him, beaming, holding a crooked but completed bowl. "It's not perfect," he said, "but I made it myself." The father smiled and whispered, "If I had never let you fall, you would never have learned to stand." Letting go can be an act of the deepest compassion. Sometimes it means trusting that others must walk their path, make their mistakes, and find their wisdom through experience. It can hurt to watch those we love stumble, but love that clings is not love that liberates. True love gives space, space for growth, space for awakening. In Buddhist thought, the act of letting go is not about abandoning what we care for, but about releasing the illusion of control. The moment we stop demanding that life bend to our will, peace arises naturally. A wise monk once said, "You don't have to carry every stone you find on the road." Yet so often, we do, collecting old disappointments, carrying silent guilt, replaying conversations that ended years ago. We tell ourselves, "I'll set this down once I understand it." But understanding comes after release, not before it. When we refuse to let go, the heart becomes crowded. We lose space for the present moment. We forget that peace requires emptiness, not as absence, but as openness. Think of your mind as a room filled with old furniture. Every piece tells a story, but there comes a time when you must clear the space. If you keep everything, there will be no room left to breathe, to create, to live. Letting go is that sacred cleaning, the act of making room for new light to enter. The Buddha once said, Holding on to anger is like grasping a hot coal with the intent of throwing it at someone else. You are the one who gets burned. That simple truth extends far beyond anger. When we hold resentment, we are the ones who suffer. When we refuse to forgive, the chains tighten around our own hearts. When we cannot release the past, we cannot fully live today. Forgiveness is one of the most profound forms of letting go. It does not mean we deny what happened or excuse harm. It means we choose freedom over bitterness. It means we understand that no amount of resentment will rewrite yesterday. In letting go, we are not saying, "What you did was right." We are saying, "I will not let it keep poisoning me." There was once a woman who came to the Buddha, filled with grief after losing her child. She carried the body in her arms, unable to release it, begging the Buddha to bring the child back to life. The Buddha said to her, "Go into the village and bring me a mustard seed from a home where no one has ever known loss." The woman went from door to door, but every home had a story of death, of heartbreak, of impermanence. She returned empty-handed, yet her heart had changed. Through her sorrow, she had discovered the truth. No one escapes loss. And in that realization, she finally placed her child down and wept, not from despair, but from understanding. That is the essence of letting go. It doesn't erase pain, it transforms it into wisdom. Sometimes we need to let go not of people or things, but of the stories we tell ourselves. I'm not enough. I should have done better. It's too late for me. These thoughts are also a kind of holding. They keep us bound to old identities, old fears. When we learn to release them, even just a little, we feel the lightness that comes from truth. The Buddha taught, "You can search the whole world over, and you will not find anyone more deserving of your love than yourself." To love yourself is to stop punishing yourself for being human. Letting go of self-judgment is one of the greatest acts of liberation. It means understanding that every mistake, every regret, every wound has been a teacher in disguise. In the stillness of meditation, the practice of letting go begins with something as simple as a breath. When you breathe in, you receive the world. When you breathe out, you release it. The breath itself teaches impermanence, that everything that comes must also go. If you try to hold the breath, it becomes suffering. But when you let it flow, it nourishes life. The same is true of emotions, relationships, even thoughts. When we allow them to arise and pass naturally, they leave peace behind. Letting go does not mean that we no longer care. It means we trust in the wisdom of the universe, that everything finds its place when we stop interfering with its rhythm. It means we understand that not all endings are tragedies. Some endings are simply transitions. Imagine standing at the edge of a river. You see a leaf floating by, and you reach out to catch it, but the current moves faster than your grasp. The more tightly you hold, the more resistance you feel. If you let the leaf go, it continues effortlessly downstream. You can watch it go without losing it, because, in truth, it was never yours to keep. We often fear that letting go will make us empty. But emptiness in Buddhist wisdom is not voidness, it is spaciousness. It is the sky, vast, open, unbounded, where clouds come and go without leaving scars. There is a deep relief that comes when we stop trying to own what was never ours, the future, the past, the opinions of others, even the body that will one day fade. To live is to hold gently, not tightly. To love is to open the hand, not close the fist. Once, a monk asked the Buddha, "How can I know if I'm walking the right path?" The Buddha replied, "When you see yourself becoming lighter, freer, more compassionate, you are walking well." That is the sign of letting go. You begin to feel lighter. You stop arguing with life. You smile more easily, not because everything is perfect, but because you no longer carry everything on your back. And sometimes, letting go is as ordinary as setting something aside for the night. When you are troubled, remind yourself, I do not need to solve this before I sleep. Close your eyes. Rest in the unknown. The mind renews itself in stillness. Often, what seemed tangled in the night becomes clear by morning. This is not avoidance, it is trust. Trust that life will reveal the next step when the time is right. When we hold less, we receive more.